Hi, I'm Andy Wake. I'm from Boxercise, and I promised everyone that I would do a review of the Hykso punch trackers. So they come in this little box. If you're lucky enough to have had yours from the US already, then you've been in the first batch, like myself. So then they come in this. This is the charger. You can see it, and into the charger that goes into USB. This is the tracker. So you put one of these in each of your hands. This then communicates with their app, which is on an iPhone or Android, I believe. And then this little part here goes into your wraps, and you wrap your wrists around that. Now you need to put an extra 2 or 3 wraps around that, I've found, to keep the thing in there. And that little tracker there is able to tell you whether or not you've thrown a left, a right, a hook, or an uppercut, a power shot as it's termed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple of the screens and show you what the thing tracks, so that you can see whether you think this is the kind of thing that you want to be using either A, with your fighters, or B, with your personal training clients, because there's quite a difference between the needs of the two. So we'll go to the screens and see what we can see, what I can show you. Okay, so if you have a look at this, you can see that this is what I have done this week. So it shows just the one session. This is one of the screens that you can use. Now, this is a really useful screen. This screen shows me which rounds I've done. Now, in this session, I did 12 2-minute rounds on 3 different bags, and you can see that there's a different work rate done on each of those bags. This is deliberate, and I've done this so that I can show whether or not I've worked hard on a round or not worked quite as hard on a round. This is a useful tool, I believe, if you're going to be training fighters, if you were doing all of your rounds on the same bag or on the pads, because you can compare them and you can see accurately whether or not you take any foot off the gas, or whether you are working at a more even work rate, if you like. So this screen I find a very, very useful one, particularly for fighters, but also for PT clients. Now we're looking at a screen which shows the one round dissected, if you like. So what you can see is that I'm fighting in bursts, which is typical of me. And when there are less punches being thrown, this is a time that I'm moving off and away from the bag, and I'm using a bit of footwork. So you can compare your work rate throughout the round, and you can see if you're working hard during each phase of the round, or whether or not you're working mostly in the middle or at the end. Again, this is useful. This is more useful for fighters, but it's also useful for PT clients who just like data. It is a pretty useful tracking tool to see what I'm doing in each round. Here's a comparison of a different round. As the video moves down, you'll be able to see it's counting not only the number of lefts and rights, but also power shots, lefts and rights. So this is just for a comparison of a different round, so you can see that. This time we're in a different screen, and you can see the actual punch count rather than the intensity score. The intensity seems to be some sort of correlation between speed of punch and numbers of punches, but this is just counting purely the number of punches. For me, as a fight coach, this is probably the most useful screen for me. So I like this screen very much, just a pure punch counter. It means I don't need to have a spare coach stood there with a clicker counter counting my boxer's punch output. So this is saving me a lot of time and effort. Okay, now we're onto a screen that is showing the average velocity of shots. Again, you can see variation in this, and the trackers are measuring this. I don't know how accurate this is. That's one thing that I can't really tell, but it does track as well the velocity of each shot. So you can see that certain shots have a higher velocity. It seems to measure that a hook, it seems to measure as a faster shot than a straight shot. Whether that is actually traveling faster, I don't know. So I must admit, I think that this function is a little bit limited, and I'm going to expand on that a little on the board in just a second. Okay, so I hope you can see this. Like I said, I do have an issue with average speed, because it's not impact speed. For example, when I move from here, my hand is moving 0 miles per hour. When it lands there, it's accelerated up to a certain speed, however quick that may be. Now, during that time, if it's measuring a speed out and back, It's also measuring a certain amount of time where the hand is not moving, and that may be calculated in there. Let me just break down a punch. And Hykso guys, if you're watching this, this is what I'd love to have you guys to be able to give me this kind of data. Now, if you can see this, I hope you can see this is my rubbish drawing of a boxing glove. I'm no good at art, but I am good at science. So this is what I want. A punch travels from here to the target. It goes from 0 miles an hour up to X amount of miles an hour, and then it spends time on the target here. Now then it retracts and goes back. Now that speed of retraction is important because we've got to get our hands back nice and quick. Now we did a punch analysis at Brunel University between myself and a friend of mine, and we both had, funnily enough, the same time that we were punching, which was our jab took 0.14 of a second to go out and to come back. But when we analysed the punches, they were vastly different. My punch took 0.04 seconds to hit the target. My friend Rob, 0.06. Now then the time spent on the target. Now this is important because this is time actually spent applying force to the target. My time was 0.04 seconds on target. Rob was 0.01. And then on the retraction, he was quicker than me. His was 0.07 to retract, and mine was 0.08. Now this shows me that I need to work on getting my hands back quicker, but this also shows me that I have 4 times the amount of time on target applying force to my opponent. So it's landing with a lot more, the punch is landing with a lot more force. Now, Hykso guys, if you could actually tell us what the time at the speed here is, time on target and the retraction, or corner. I know that you're working on an app that's a punch tracker that's similar to this. If someone could give me that data, that would be a lot more useful than just telling me 0.14 of a second, because that's going to tell me a great deal more. In summary, so far I'm really impressed with it. I think it takes away the need for me to have a coach that's there with a clicker counter. I've got one over there on my desk telling me how many punches someone's doing. I also don't need to sort of count in the back of my head how many bursts per round a fighter is doing. So for example, some fighters fight with, like myself, 3 bursts per round, sustained bursts of effort. Some fighters with 4 bursts per round. But you see, I can see if someone has done X amount of bursts per round just by looking at those graphs that I've shown you. So for fighters, it's great. It's really, really useful. Now for personal trainers looking at these sort of trackers, I think that they're very good, but a lot of the data in there, and especially if you were to do something like this, is totally irrelevant to them. Just the punch number, punch output, and the intensity is absolutely fantastic. So for those of you personal trainers out there who are looking to get these things, I don't think it's a real no-brainer. For professional coaches, I think there's a little bit more work needs to go into it before we can really use all of that data. In terms of doing the basic functions, yeah, it's great. So far, I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. To get a 10 out of 10, I would like this data, and that's it. That's my review. It has been very, very useful, and I'll continue to test it. Tonight I'll be putting into someone's hands in a boxercise class to see how many punches they throw within the space of a 1 hour class. Let's see. It'll be very interesting. Thanks for watching, guys.